Key point 1. It's time to ask yourself, who am I? As children, we've constantly heard the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? We name professions or characteristics in response, a doctor, a hero, or a parent, and the like. In childhood, the moment of growing up seems to come overnight. However, over the years, we realize that personality formation is a process that uninterruptedly continues as long as we live. Humans constantly change, grow, and search for their true selves. Who am I? Is the central question of our lives. Michelle Obama published her memoirs in 2018. The 54-year-old former First Lady of the United States of America shared her reflection on life. As one of the most famous, influential, and adored women alive, Michelle was trying to return to her inner self. She has already excelled in every area of her life. She has successfully applied her legal background to her career as a lawyer. As a First Lady, Michelle has traveled worldwide on diplomatic missions and obligations to the country. For several years, she led charitable foundations and social programs and was vice president of the University of Chicago Medical Center. In addition, together with her husband, they built a strong and happy family. Michelle gave birth and raised 2 children who have grown into independent women who are now making their way in life. After dedicating her life to helping others, it's time for Michelle Obama to step back, remember her desires and interests, and experience the ordinary pleasures of life again. She invites us to accompany her on her journey. Join us as we learn Michelle Obama's story of personal development, citing the difficulties she overcame, her lessons, and her life creeds. Key point 2. Parental love gives us the strength to overcome all difficulties. Michelle Obama grew up in Chicago in the late 1960s and early 1970s. Her parents rented the second floor of a private house that belonged to their relatives. Michelle's mother's aunt, Robbie, and her husband lived on the ground floor. Robbie led the church choir and gave piano lessons at home. Michelle became one of her students and mastered the piano at age 5. It is worth noting that there were many talented musicians and devoted admirers of the piano in her family, so music theory saturated Michelle's early years. Michelle Obama's maiden name is Robinson. Her father, Fraser, worked at a waterworks, and her mother was a housewife. The Robinsons also had a son, Craig. He was only 2 years older than Michelle, but he always felt responsible for her and treated her kindly and protectively. Craig has been a wonderful friend to his little sister all their life. Michelle grew up as a curious, hard-working child who always got her way. She loved to learn and stood up to healthy competition with other children. It's worth paying tribute to the wisdom of her parents. They did not try to break her firmness of character and stubbornness. Mom and Dad always spoke with their children on an equal footing, honestly and openly, as with adults. Michelle became a strong and confident person thanks to her parents' support and encouragement. "I'm not raising babies," Mom used to say. "I'm raising adults." Michelle Obama. Michelle's parents strived to ensure a happy childhood full of games, care, and joyful discoveries. Unbeknownst to her, her dad had multiple sclerosis. Her father's progressive illness did not overshadow her early life because the girl was unaware of its seriousness. Over the years, it manifested into lameness and difficulty in movement. As time went on, the illness progressed, and Michelle soon saw her father with a crutch, and then with 2. But Fraser did not despair. He never let the disease take away his joy and his family. There was no drama at home. Everyone steadfastly accepted reality and continued to live. Little Michelle also did not yet care about the problems of poverty and social inequality. Her parents clearly explained that injustice and bias will not deprive her of the right to be heard and accepted. Although racial discrimination was ubiquitous in the 1970s, Michelle took everything with humor and was not afraid to fight back. Key point 3. It takes courage and perseverance to stand for your place in the sun. Michelle had worked part-time since she was a teenager because she tried not to burden her parents with extra expenses. It was mainly monotonous and boring physical work that motivated the young girl to strive for a good education and a serious career. Both she and her brother went to Princeton. They became the first generation in their family to receive such a prestigious education. Their parents lived a modest life full of care and responsibilities. They didn't travel, buy real estate, or go to restaurants. Everything they had, they invested in their children, who appreciated all of their labors. When Michelle entered college, the issue of social inequality became apparent. In the early 1980s, the overwhelming majority of students at Princeton were white males from wealthy families. For Michelle, such an environment was unusual. She felt out of place. People often exacerbated this feeling by throwing sidelong glances or ambiguous hints. Michelle came from a background where she had to battle poverty and social isolation to reach her goals. Over the years, the place where the future First Lady grew up became increasingly immersed in crisis and acquired a bad reputation. Families that could afford it sold their houses and moved. Soon, there were practically no white people left in the village. Society treated black people with suspicion and prejudice, demoralizing and depressing them. The abyss of resentment from injustice sucked in those who did not have the strength to resist it. Unfortunately, some minority members found no better solution than to live up to poor expectations. But for Michelle, Chicago's South Side was not a dangerous, rundown ghetto. For her, it was home. There, she fell in love for the first time, made friends, and learned to be stubborn and honest. There, her mother made sandwiches for her between school hours, and her father eventually switched from crutches to a wheelchair. To be on an equal footing with the privileged members of society took a lot of effort, perseverance, and a strong spirit. Young Michelle fought purposefully every day, trying to prove to herself and to other students that she deserved to be among them. She believed she was defending her honor and the rights of her race and status representatives. Did you know? Michelle Obama's grandfather was the grandson of enslaved people. Despite his remarkable intelligence, he did not get an education due to poverty and social inequality. Key point 4. Love comes without asking if we're ready for it. After Princeton, Michelle entered Harvard to receive a law degree. Although she would consider this decision a mistake a few years later, it seemed like an absolute victory so far. The whole family was proud of Michelle. She was proud of herself, and quite deservedly so. By 25, she had a well-paid position in an elite law firm. She even had a personal assistant. She bought a car and enjoyed wealthy privileges that no one in her family had experienced. Michelle finally escaped poverty and a marginalized society. The young woman was absorbed in her work and concentrated all her energy on building a successful career. She was adamant that she was not ready for a serious relationship when one man who ended up changing everything appeared in her life. Barack joined Michelle's firm as an intern after his first year at Harvard. Michelle was his mentor, but it soon became apparent that he had more practical experience than she did. Barack was 3 years older than Michelle and had already worked as a public organizer. He entered the faculty of law to reinforce his ideas with theoretical knowledge. The young man thought abstractly and on a large scale. He attached little importance to material values. He wanted to change the world. His very birth can be called a happy accident. His mother, a white American, was 17 when, while studying in Hawaii, she fell in love with a black student from Kenya. Shortly after their child's birth, her husband disappeared from her life, leaving their son only his name, Barack Obama II. When Barack and Michelle met, they were both fully formed individuals with goals and ambitions. Despite having a few more years of long-distance relationship, they clearly understood that they were ready to go hand in hand all their lives, supporting each other in everything. The love of two mature people gives comfort and consolation to both without limiting their aspirations. Barack helped Michelle realize that she wanted to be the initiator of significant change in the environment in which she grew up. He inspired her by his example to look for opportunities and realize her potential to accomplish socially essential things. His advice culminated when Michelle's final impulse to change her life was her grief. Key point 5. The pain of loss teaches us to value life genuinely. Michelle became friends with Suzanne Allel in college. They were roommates. Despite their radically different characters, their friendship lasted many years. Unlike Michelle, Suzanne did not pursue her goals. She preferred to live each day to the maximum and take as much joy, adventure, and risk from life as possible. When Michelle grew up as a hard-working and demanding woman, Suzanne remained reckless, cheerful, and carefree. She did not devote her life to building a career, but went on crazy trips, had liaisons, and agreed to all adventures. There was so much life in her that her illness and sudden death seemed to be someone's evil and implausible fiction. Suzanne was 26, the same age as Michelle, when she got cancer. The depth of this tragedy was unimaginable. One moment, Michelle sees her beloved friend laughing fervently, and in the next, she's already on her deathbed. The pain of loss and the cruelty of fate became a painful and sobering blow for Michelle. The sight of her dying friend is forever imprinted in her mind as a symbol of the fragility of life. Alas, Michelle soon had to go through another grief. Her father, who had had multiple sclerosis for many years, always refused to seek medical help. He laughed it off in response to his family's requests to see a doctor. Even in a wheelchair, almost unable to move, he continued commuting daily to work. The children never forced him into a treatment against his will, not violating his self-respect and freedom. When Michelle's father entered intensive care, it was too late to treat him. He was 55 years old when he died, leaving gaping holes in his children's and wife's hearts. Pain knocks us down, but makes us stronger and better people when we rise again. Living after someone dies is hard and painful. It also imposes a special responsibility on us, the survivors, and implores us to use our time wisely. Michelle had to lose two close people to finally realize that paying bills, colleague respect, and membership in an elite wine club were not her ultimate dreams. Significant deeds, bold changes, and outstanding achievements awaited her. She could no longer push them aside. Key point 6. Serving our values brings us more fulfillment than money ever could. Michelle began to explore opportunities to realize her potential. She wanted to be helpful to the people of her native area, help young people find their place in the world, and influence social change. The first suitable job for this was in City Hall. However, leaving her position at the law firm was difficult since the new salary was only half of her regular income. Barack became her primary support. He convinced her that although the unknown is frightening, it does not necessarily pose a mortal danger. He said they could handle everything together, and it would be a rewarding experience for Michelle. He was right. Working in the mayor's office gave her good friends, friendly people, connections, and a reputation. Michelle accepted the offer from the mayor's office and shortly after said another critical yes in response to Barack's request to get married. These decisions became essential in her fate and gave her strength for further bold actions and overcoming her fears. Her next position was the role of executive director in a nonprofit organization. Michelle's team was looking for talented, low-income youth and organized training and internships for them, involved them in volunteer activities, and helped them get good jobs. Michelle became a mentor, role model, leader, and a friend to young people in her area. She gave them a life-changing chance to escape poverty, addiction, and the label of disadvantage they were born with on the outskirts of Chicago. Michelle led the youth along the path she had previously walked, giving her an absolute sense of moral satisfaction. However, this was the first time Michelle realized that charity is the privilege of people who can afford to work for free. Although as a young family, Michelle and Barack often experienced financial difficulties, they still engaged in non-profit public service activities for the next 2 decades. It inspired them and filled their lives with a sense of significance. Working for the benefit of our ideas and values gives us more than profit can provide, a sense of wholeness, inspiration, and meaning. Soon, 2 beautiful girls joined the Obama family. Their daughters, Malia and Sasha, were born 3 years apart and gave Barack and Michelle a feeling of happiness and completeness. Key point 7. We must speak for those without a voice. Michelle didn't trust politics. It seemed to her a dirty, dangerous, and dishonest business. However, her husband saw himself as a politician. Barack believed he could bring about significant changes in the country's life, and Michelle believed in Barack. Although during her husband's numerous political campaigns, she often secretly hoped that he would lose, but she always supported him. Allowing your partner to realize their ambitions, even if you don't like them, manifests mature love. Michelle took an active part in her husband's election campaign and soon feared and regretted how her entire public image boiled down to the one-sided role of a politician's wife. Such an image was no match for her, a stubborn, hard-working, and determined woman with many successful projects. However, Michelle decided to leave her job and give herself to her family. Supporting her husband and taking care of their children became her priority. Barack becoming president placed a huge responsibility on him and his family. Those with power are under scrutiny and constantly face condemnation, unrealistic demands, hatred, and slander. Of course, such an experience is a test for any person. The Obama couple did everything they could to get through this with dignity and bring the country as much good as possible. While Barack struggled with the state's economic problems, Michelle promoted her idea of caring for health through natural nutrition to the masses. She set out to minimize the percentage of childhood obesity by agreeing with large manufacturers to limit the use of sugar in their products. The First Lady and her husband worked hard to create better conditions for the military, veterans, and their families. Michelle's most important goal was to support gifted but oppressed youth. She organized mentoring programs for teenagers. She needed to make every kid believe that their voice was significant. Michelle knows firsthand how valuable it is to understand that someone believes in you. By helping young people, the First Lady contributed to the country's development because she was sure the future belonged to these lonely, intimidated, and timid children. She sowed seeds of hope in those who would eventually change the world. I was determined to be someone who told the truth, using my voice to lift up the voiceless. Michelle Obama. Conclusion. Michelle Obama's story is impressive and delightful because it allows us to believe that anything is possible. The most daring ambitions are realizable, and dreams are achievable, even if you represent a social minority from a poor provincial area. The primary condition is diligence and faith in yourself. Throughout her long and winding journey, from a student who miraculously entered Princeton to the First Lady of the United States, Michelle asked herself the same questions. Am I good enough? Do I deserve all the blessings that I got? It took her a couple of decades to come to an answer. Yes, she is. And each of us is good enough and worthy of everything life offers. The only question is, which of the world's gifts will we accept? The Obamas are a perfect example of mature love and a secure relationship built on mutual respect, trust, and support. Whatever hardships they faced, they went through them together, holding each other's hand and laughing. They had to give up personal interests to develop their ideas and serve their ideals. They learned who they were through hard work, risky decisions, and perseverance in pursuing their objectives despite obstacles. The becoming lasts a lifetime. The most important thing is not to betray yourself on this long, tortuous path. Try this. Listen to the Michelle Obama podcast. Watch the documentary Becoming 2020. If you have kids, invite them to watch Waffles Plus Mochi, a children's cooking TV show on Netflix. Michelle Obama is the executive producer who frequently appears in episodes. This show is the realization of her dream to make the eating habits of little Americans healthier.